Well, welcome to the lecture of Gender Economics course on the review of gender indexes. Um, in this lecture, we are going to review two different gender reports. One of them is this one, Global Gender Gap Report (GG) of the World Economic Forum. The other one is UNDP's Development Report, where there are some tables related to gender. This is a relatively more earlier report, basically. This one is recent. Well, at different human development reports can be, focus on different subjects. So this report was more interesting in terms of its tables and in terms of its framework. So I decided to keep this one as a human development report, especially in terms of its gender analysis. But for the second report, I wanted to look to them relatively more recent report. As a starting point, basically, there's a 5-minute clip where you can see what people wish on gender inequality issues to improve in next 10 years. It's interesting, and you can, it is interesting also in terms of looking what people, of course, this doesn't show any overall average information, but what ordinary people think that is important on gender inequality framework. So I encourage you to watch it. Let's say you have watched it and I am continuing the lecture. Well, in Global Gender Report, there are 4 different sub-indexes. Global Gender Gap Report. One is economic participation and opportunity, educational attainment, health and survival, and political empowerment. So 4 different numbers are calculated for these 4 different sub-indexes, and basically after that you got the full index by combining these 4 variables. So what are the variables? These are countries. So these are the variables. Oh, I'm sorry. I should be able to. Okay. Labor force this is economic participation and opportunity. Labor force participation rates, females to males, wage equality to similar work, 1 to 7 scale in terms of wage inequality. Females to males, estimated earned income, PPP, purchasing power parity, males to females. Wage is hourly, income is yearly, which means if women are more likely to work at part-time work, then this would be wage might be the same, but income might be smaller, or income might be smaller than, income inequality might be larger than wage inequality. Legislators, senior officials, managers, percentage between males to males. These are upper positions, basically. Professionals and technical workers, these are skilled positions, basically. So these are administrative positions mostly, and these are skilled positions, basically. Education attainment, literacy rate, enrollment to primary, secondary, and third-year education, health and survival, sex ratio at birth, females to males. Basically, you might say why this is there. because you might think at first the sex ratio at birth is something the nature is actually providing. But in fact, actually, in some countries, illegally and without recording, women, when children are female girls, they can be killed because the family might want male child and cannot afford to look after both female and male child. And in that case, actually, this is a case of missing girls. I mean, you cannot necessarily see it on data because it is not done in a recorded basis. But you cannot see direct data of girls killed, but you can see at least in those countries, female children are male children are abnormally at higher numbers compared with female children. So that is what sex ratio at birth is capturing. Health life expectancy, female, male, and then women empowerment, women in parliament, women in ministerial positions, years of female head of state, last 50 years, share of tenure years, female to male. So these are the variables calculated with this, and you have different weights for different variables, by the way. Well, when you look to the methodology, you can see that these different weights are given according to the standard deviations of the variables. Standard deviation is higher if, on average, countries are have different values for that variable. I mean, some countries are doing very good and bad. In that case, the weight of the variable is higher, and if the countries are doing similar, in that case, the weight is low. And basically, as you see, each variable is between 0 and 1. And if women are equal or better than men, then we don't say that there's inequality with respect to men. We rather say there is no inequality. We take the gap to be 0. And here are the values. Well, the global gender gap is 68%. The best will be 100%. Economic attainment sub-index and health and survival index are relatively high, 95 and 96%. Economic participation and opportunity index, education attainment index, sub-index, and health and survival index. Economic participation and opportunity index is 58, not that good, basically. And political empowerment is very low. So you see more deviation in economic participation and the political empowerment. That's one thing that is clearly visible. And you can see, I mean, these are from the last report, by the way, the 2017 report. There are no parallel versions in this report, so I have also kept those graphs. So as you see, in health and survival, there is very little deviation. In education attainment, some countries are doing bad, basically, but most countries are concentrated here. Economic opportunity, again, some countries are doing bad, some countries are doing average, most countries are at average location, and some countries are doing extraordinarily good. In political empowerment, it is the opposite. Most countries are doing bad, and there are some countries that are doing extraordinarily good. The best one being Iceland. These are the different regions of the world. Remember, this was the 68%. Western Europe is best, 75%. Latin America is 70%, for example. Eastern Europe is 71%. South Asia, Middle East is the worst. Sub-Saharan Africa, even Sub-Saharan Africa is better than Middle East. Note that this looks the deviations from male and female, not overall values. And South Asia is also, I mean, at the lower end, so maybe not in unexpected ways. So there are also some country scores, by the way. At the end, we might look to them. But you can see the trends here, basically. Economic opportunity, overall gender gap was getting better up to 2014, and it somehow has stagnated. Economic opportunity has somehow gone worse. Political empowerment has increased, and in the last 2 years, it has been stagnated. And health and education, both of them were already very high at 2006, and they have more or less stayed the same up to 2017. So these are different variables, basically. Well, we show correlation of different variables. As you see, wage and labor market participation, when we look to that, well, there are some countries where both of them are high, and there are some countries where wage is relatively high, but labor market participation is low. This might be, by the way, because in some countries the woman might only be able to find positions at the higher levels, but low-skilled jobs might be more close to the woman. And there are some countries where you have relatively high wage, but relatively high labor force participation, but wage is relatively low, or at least wage inequality is relatively higher. Surprisingly, for example, United Kingdom is here, was one of those countries. Surprisingly, for example, Liberia and Botswana are countries where both wage in terms of wage parity and labor force participation are better. The inequality is small in those countries. Again, note that. That doesn't mean the absolute value is high. Relationship between GNI and global gender gap. As GNI gets higher, well, you don't see a direct relationship, as you see. Probably that's also because you have some countries with very low GNI and very high inequality, gender equality. Rwanda, Nicaragua, those countries are probably economic problems are experienced both by men and women equally, basically. And then you have at least one country with very high GNI, Qatar, and under the average, the gender inequality or equality score. Turkey is here, by the way. This is GDP per capita, by the way, not overall GDP level. Political empowerment, economic participation, they are maybe somehow correlated, although, well, without economic participation, political empowerment more or less doesn't exist. India and Bangladesh might be some exceptions, but even with economic participation, in some cases, political empowerment might still not exist. So, economic participation and opportunity might be necessary for political empowerment, except for India and Bangladesh, but not enough. Maybe something more is needed. Education and economics. Well, again, you see most countries here clustered at the top. So, country profiles. Next, we will look to the country profiles within the index, basically. Well, let's see it in the next part, let's say.